just make sure you're aware of all of those costs.
Financial preparation is key, isn't it?
So usually within the first year, you can report any defects.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I wish I had that when I moved in.
Ever experienced any kind of rodents in properties?
I haven't.
Yeah, that's a housemate you definitely don't.
Wow.
No, I'd be out. No such thing as a stupid question. We'd rather you ask than worried about it.
Welcome to this episode of Shared Ownership Unpacked. I'm Joe Bartlett, also known as the Home Buyer Coach, and I'm with Rob Horn from Southern Housing.
Today, we're talking about buying off plan and then all the things that happen after you get your keys. So we're thinking pets, repairs, decorating, and what it's really like to live in a shared ownership home. We're joined today by our sales support manager, Lisa Strudwick. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us. And before we dive into today's episode, can you give us a quick rundown of your career to date so far, Lisa?
Yeah, sure. So I started in housing in around 1995, temping in a housing association, working within the resales team. And then I basically worked through various teams, stayed with the same housing association for around 10 years. As I say, worked through various teams, various government initiatives, various different schemes, but always within sales and marketing. I had a career break when I had my children, and then I came back to working with Southern Housing about 3 years ago, again back within sales and marketing.
Brilliant. And we're so glad you're in our team. Such a positive energy to our team for sure. And hopefully you'll be able to bring that same energy to the podcast today.
Thanks, Rob.
You're welcome. All of our podcasts so far, we're kicking off with a quack attack. So this section of the podcast, we basically give you 20 seconds to answer one question. There's not too much pressure on it, but we will be setting a timer for 20 seconds. And one question, 20 seconds. How does that feel? That sounds good?
I'll give it a go.
Yeah? All right, cool. So your question is, in 20 seconds, can you list everything you're allowed to do in a shared ownership home?
Okay, so can I start? So you can decorate, you can paint, you can wallpaper, you can furnish it, you can bring in some lovely plants, you can make changes. You could have a new kitchen, a new bathroom. Some of these come with a caveat, but if you lived in a house, you could add a conservatory. There's many things that you can do within a shared ownership home.
Okay, great.
Yeah, very, very impressive. So can you buy off-plan every development, or is there only specific ones?
Most of our developments will launch off-plan. It depends at what stage of the development we get involved and at what stage we decide to launch. But generally, we do try and sell most of our developments off-plan to start with. We may still be selling as they then become stock plots. But yes, most are off-plan.
Yeah, I can imagine, a lot of people would prefer to see a property and actually feel the space first. It takes quite a good imagination to imagine what it's going to be like. I know things have come a long way. You can imagine buying off-plan back in the day when they didn't have things like CGI and, really professional imagery. It was just like, how good you're drawing, basically.
Yeah. We will sometimes have a show home. So if we can get safe access to site, then we'll have a show home that we can show you. So then that's going to give you a really good indication of layout and spec and things like that. I really like looking at floor plans. I think because I've been doing it for such a long time, I'm house hunting at the moment, and the first thing I do is look at the floor plan because I want to see how the rooms flow. And
I guess you can learn a lot even off plan from the floor plan, because that's not going to change at any point, right?
No, exactly. Yeah, it's not going to change.
When you say buying off plan, what does that mean, and what are the kind of pros and cons with buying off plan?
Yeah, so most housing associations will launch a new build development off plan, so whilst the properties are still under construction. So if you purchase a property off plan, you're essentially buying without seeing the property. So you are seeing the brochure and the floor plans and the price list. We may have some CGI images, computer generated images to show you of the properties, but generally you are buying it from the floor plan. Pros of that are that you're securing the property at that price, that prices are still under construction, and when you reserve and you pay a reservation fee, we're holding that price for you. So another pro of buying off plan is that if that development is really popular, you're securing that property early on in the launch stages. If you wait for it to become a stock plot, there might not be any properties left, especially with houses, because they're in high demand, and in some areas which are, in high demand, more desirable places to live. Cons would be that the property is still under construction, and sometimes there are things like construction delays, so you won't have a fixed completion date. That's the sort of con when you're buying off plan.
When you talk about the pro being kind of the price at that point, is it likely that is going to be a slightly cheaper price than it would be perhaps if you waited until the build was complete and you were buying what we'd call like a stock plot?
Yeah, so it's always current market value. So it's not that you're getting a discounted price, you're buying that property at current market value, but properties are revalued every 3 months. So, if that increased in 3 months' time, by the time it becomes a stock plot, you may find that it's slightly more expensive than it was when we originally had it valued.
So with shared ownership then, are any of these properties restricted as to who can actually buy them?
Yeah, so some developments will have what's called a Section 106 agreement attached to them, and that will mean that the local authority has stipulated that only people that live or work in that area can purchase one of those properties. It's usually for a set period of time, and they do that to preserve the local community and to make homes available for local people that live and work in that community. As I say, it's usually for a set period of time, and then that falls away and we can cascade that out to other priority groups.
Okay, and
Nice.
what kind of other groups are there?
Yeah, so MOD personnel are always highest priority for any shared ownership home. Social tenants are also a priority because obviously then they're freeing up a social home for somebody else. And then it will go to priority, usually goes to people that live or work in that area.
What kind of surprises do people face when they move in, and how can they prepare for them?
So I think one of the things to remember when you're buying a new build property is that there may be some defects. And when I say defects, I mean minor issues in the property. And that's something that people don't always realise, and they expect to move into a completely perfect new build property. But the properties are hand built, if you like, and there will sometimes be settlement cracks and things like that, and they're completely normal. You're living in a new building that needs time to settle, and these things are completely normal. Some people tend to move in and panic, there's a crack appearing in the wall. So when you move into a new build property, you have a defects liability period. So usually within the first year, you can report any defects back to the developer, and they will come out and do any repairs that are needed. There are some NHBC guidelines that specify what a defect is, and at the end of the defects period you'll have an end of defects inspection. So the developer will come out again, look at any defects and correct them.
Okay, so the NHBC, that's the warranty basically,
yes,
isn't it?
That's right.
Perfect, okay.
Okay, and in terms of you said that they'll come out and then have a look at them, how smooth is that process? Are you sort of saying anything that a resident points out will get looked at, or is there some sort of back and forth between that?
So any cosmetic defects won't be picked up. So if there's a scuff on a wall or a very minor crack, that wouldn't be classed as a defect. As I said, the NHBC have got some guidelines around that. So one of those, for example, with cracks, is that anything that you could fit a £1 coin into or larger is considered a defect. So they would come back and repair that for you. Anything smaller than that is considered just settlement cracks, and that would be for the homeowner to repair themselves.
Okay.
What about the more cosmetic bits then? So the bits where the finishes aren't quite what you'd expect, for a new build house, whether that's the skirting board really isn't finished very well with big gaps and things like that. What could be done for that kind of thing?
Yeah, so if there was a big gap in a skirting board, that's potentially something you could refer back. Southern Housing have an aftercare team, as most housing associations will, and you're reporting your defects back through them, who are then contacting the developer on your behalf. So if you had a big, gap in a skirting board, that is potentially something you could report back and the developer may come out and repair. It's just anything minor. Like I said, a scuff on a wall, a very minor crack or a very slight gap in a skirting board would be for the homeowner to repair themselves.
Fine, I understand. And who's responsible? So once you live in the property, who's responsible if anything breaks? So
you're signing, with a shared ownership property, you're signing a fully repairing lease, which means that you're responsible for the repairs within your property. As I said, there's the defects liability period, so anything within that first year that's considered a defect would be covered. In terms of your appliances, if your property comes with appliances, they'd be under a 1-year warranty. After that time, it would be for the homeowner to repair. And then general repairs in the property after the year are the homeowner's responsibility. Some of the newer leases, there's a new model lease, which you would be told about when you purchase the property if it has that type of lease. There is a section in there that states that you can claim up to £500 a year from the Housing Association towards repairs, and that's for things like plumbing repairs, stuff like that. Again, not for really minor stuff or wear and tear.
Are pets allowed in shared ownership properties?
Yeah, so most of the time it's absolutely fine to have pets. There are occasions where we've got one scheme at the moment where pets aren't allowed. That's because we don't own the head lease of that property, and the company that do have specified no pets, but you would know that at the point of reserving the property. But generally, yes, you are allowed to have pets in the property. We ask you to complete a pet consent form, which just tells us what pet you've got living in the property, just so we've got a record of it.
And do we have sort of restrictions on what those pets can be in terms of, if I wanted to have a cat or a dog, it seems fairly straightforward, but what if I've got like a
mountain goat?
Well, maybe not a mountain goat, but I was thinking maybe like a snake or something like that.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. We've recently had a purchaser with many reptiles, so we got a pet consent form which consisted of about 4 or 5 pages of reptiles. Yeah, so that's absolutely fine. I don't think there's particular restrictions. Maybe a mountain goat wouldn't be allowed.
Yeah. Big giant duck, probably not.
Maybe not. Quaxley's welcome.
Quaxley's welcome,
yeah,
but
always.
Maybe not actual sized duck of
not
Quaxley's
actual
stature.
ducks.
Okay,
yeah.
Fair enough.
Earlier on, you were mentioning about decorating. You're allowed to, paint, wallpaper, things like that. Where do you draw the line? So, I suppose at certain stages of DIY, some things you're allowed to do, some things you're not allowed to do. So we've spoken about what you can do, what can't you do?
So I said that came with some caveats, and the caveats for that is you can decorate your property, it's absolutely fine. What we say is you should probably hold off wallpapering or installing fitted wardrobes for the first year. That's because you may cover up any settlement cracks that are happening as the property settles down, dries out, and they might then be missed on your defects inspection at the end of that year. So we kind of say it's not that you absolutely can't, but it's not a good idea to wallpaper or put in fitted wardrobes in that first year. Flooring, you can change your flooring. I think with some apartments you may need permission to change the flooring, because I suppose if you've got carpets and then you put down wooden flooring, that could affect your neighbours. And that's the same when we're talking about pets as well, and making those changes to properties. We're thinking about the impact on your neighbours and things. So, that's why we kind of put in those restrictions.
And that would all be stipulated in the lease, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would all be stipulated in the lease, yeah.
Okay. We've spoken a bit there about kind of decorating and things like that, but what about if I wanted to kind of knock for a wall or make some major structural changes? How does that work?
Yeah, so if you wanted to make any changes to the property, you would need to get permission from the Housing Association. So you would have a housing officer, a home ownership officer that would look after you after you've moved in, so you would need to contact them. Generally, though, you wouldn't be able to sort of knock down walls or anything like that. But you may eventually want a new kitchen or a new bathroom, and we would always ask you to register those improvements with us. That's so that we've got all the paperwork, you've got all the paperwork that you would need to guarantee any of that work, so that when you come on to sell later on, you've got all that available to you.
Perfect.
Amazing. So if you eventually move in, is there anybody that you can kind of contact if you have any questions, queries, anything you're not quite happy with?
Yeah, so at Southern, we've got a sales support team. So after you've moved in, a week after you've moved in, you'll receive a call from the sales support team, checking that you've settled in okay, that you've managed to set up your utilities, your council tax, that kind of thing, and we can help with any of those first teething issues you might have. We can also signpost you onto other parts of the business. So I mentioned earlier the aftercare team. We can pass you over to them if you want to report any defects, and we can pass you over to home ownership, who ultimately look after you once you become one of our residents.
So you're like a nice middleman.
We are.
Middlewoman even.
Yes.
To knowing, I guess, the benefit of that is you know exactly who the best team for the person to talk to is,
Yeah,
right?
that's right. And we will have been to some of the site meetings, home demos, that kind of thing. So we'll be able to tell you who your internet provider is, where the bin store is, where the bike store is, that kind of thing. All the little things that you might not think to ask. Cool. When you move, just before you move in.
And can you help with things like bills and stuff like that, like setting them up in your name and things?
Yeah, so we can help you with your utility bills, tell you who you need to contact. We'll give you meter readings on the day that you move in. We'll have those when we make that phone call to you if you didn't, you were busy that and you didn't get a chance to note that down.
Yeah,
absolutely. So we can provide you with all of that.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, I wish I had that when I moved in.
Yeah. Is that quite a common thing? Like, do a lot of housing associations have that type of relationship or team that deal with those?
Yeah, not that I'm aware of. I think I've heard of one other that have that sales support service. But yes, it's not something that I'm aware of in many housing associations.
Oh, that's good. It's a good little USP for us there at Southern. Nice one. Okay, so we're going to move on now. We're going to go into our myth busting section of the podcast, and this time round it's a little bit different to how we've done it previous episodes. We're going to watch some videos of people that attended the last London Home Show, and they were asked a few questions and they gave answers. So we're going to watch these. Going to kind of have a chat about what's said in each little cutaway clip, I suppose.
Do you have any bad housemate stories?
When I was at uni, I went home and my mum packed me loads of food to bring back, and I left it in the fridge at uni, came back, someone ate it all.
Oh, God.
Oh, no.
That's got to happen a lot, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the classic one, isn't it?
It is.
Like,
She needed to label that.
she needed to write on it passive aggressively.
Yeah.
Her name
Yes.
on everything.
Padlock on the milk.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
a line on the milk
Yeah,
to
that's it.
see where it's gone down to. Yeah, that's not a good one. Okay, moving on to the next one then. Let's have a look at this one's horror stories. I wonder if this one will be food related or not.
In South London, and we had a rat that lived behind the oven called Pedro, and we left out a humane trap for him. I came down in the morning and nearly fainted as he was sat there eating a sweet potato. That's my worst housemate I've ever had.
Yeah, that's a housemate you definitely don't
Wow.
want.
No, I'd be out.
Cute that they named it though.
Yeah.
I wonder if it was actually someone's pet. You know, we're just assuming that it was a random rat in the house. Maybe it was someone's pet.
I think you're giving a lot of credit to Pedro here.
I am.
So it definitely sounds more like
Yeah.
someone
An unwanted.
an unwanted guest. Yeah. Oh. Ever experienced any kind of rodents in properties that you...
I haven't, but do you know, I can imagine the landlord now kicking off for having pets in the house.
Yeah, I know, right?
You know,
Yeah.
that's
He
going to
probably
happen.
didn't have
They're going to need
pets.
to fill in that pet consent form.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you imagine?
Pedro.
Sorry, guys, but you're actually feeding it, so that's officially become your pet now. And
you've named it, more importantly.
Oh, dear. Right, let's move on to the next one then.
No, because I've only ever lived with my mum and dad.
Okay, all right, that's good. That's
Oh, bless.
that's sweet.
That was
That's
quite sweet,
cute.
though. So she doesn't have a bad story. I mean, I'm sure she does.
Well, the
Yeah.
thing is, you know, for a lot of people, the transition is from living with parents straight into home ownership because, you know, if you're renting first, living with housemates, the rent's usually so expensive that you're unable to buy, you know?
Yeah, lots of our buyers, come from living with family, and we're aware of that. And that's something that, so I manage a team of sales progressors, and they're really good at keeping in touch with buyers throughout the entire process, like that kind of hand-holding element to help you through the process, because it is daunting
Yeah, definitely.
and it's stressful. So, yeah, we're always here to help.
Brilliant. I think there might be one more, so let's just have a look at this last one.
Yeah, I lived in a house of 7 in Manchester at university, and that was a challenge. I think some people decided to not do any washing up for the whole year, so it's the same story that a lot of people have. But
I think at one point there was an ecosystem in a glass that had been left for a while at your house.
Yeah.
She did not enjoy visiting him at uni, did she?
No.
No. Have either of you ever house shared before?
Only at uni, yeah.
Yeah, like the whole living with other people and them not cleaning up after themselves.
Oh my
That's the
goodness.
worst bit of it, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, definitely.
That's just my everyday life with my 3
Yeah.
children. Yeah, we've had ecosystems in glasses before.
Lovely. I've got all
Yeah.
that to come.
So while we're on the subject, are you allowed lodgers with shared ownership?
You are, yes. You can rent out a room. You can't rent out the entire property, but as long as you're living there still, then yes, you can rent out a room. You can also buy with other people. So you might have a friend that you want to buy with or a sibling. That happens sometimes. 2 siblings will buy together. So that is also possible.
Oh, so you're still not safe from someone else eating your food.
That's true.
So I'm pretty sure I would have been that person. If I'd have bought with my sister, she'd have been constantly complaining, "You've eaten all the food again."
Yeah, I'm the eater in
Yeah.
that scenario, definitely. Yeah. Well, that leads us on to the next section, which is the nest egg section. So what is your nest egg, Lisa? What is your one bit of advice that you would give to a first-time buyer looking to buy their first home?
So I would say make sure you're aware of all the costs associated with buying a home. So obviously you're going to know about your solicitor's fees, your mortgage arrangement fees, that kind of thing. One thing people don't always consider is that when you first move in, your first month's mortgage payment might be slightly higher. And also housing associations will ask for some rent in advance. So you usually pay rent from the day you move in to the end of the month plus another month. So just make sure you're aware of all of those costs, have your savings ready, and maybe have just a little bit of a contingency for anything that you weren't aware of.
Okay.
Definitely. Yeah,
that's good to know.
financial preparation is key, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I didn't actually know that, so that's good. I'm glad we've sort of been able to share that.
You touched on quite an interesting point there with the timings of the payments. So with the rent and the service charge, that's going to be on one date, and then you've got the mortgage that may be a completely other part of the month. So it's not all going to come out seamlessly on day one as soon as you move in. With a mortgage, it takes a while for the direct debit and things like that to be set up. So that generally doesn't come out until, much further into the month. And the reason why it's higher is because you're paying the interest on the time you've been in the property but haven't made that first payment yet.
Yeah.
So you have to watch out for that.
Yeah, definitely. It's worth noting as well that the reservation fee that you pay when you first reserve a property is deducted from that first month's rent. So you will have already paid a portion of that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Lightens the load a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah. We've covered some really good stuff in this episode, to be fair. And I think a massive takeaway is the fact that we're joined by Lisa, who represents quite a unique team within Southern Housing. And I think it's, big highlight is just how crucial your team, crucial a part your team play in this whole process to really make people feel a little bit more comfortable about such a big thing that's happening.
Absolutely. And as I say, we're always on the phone lines to help out with any questions. No such thing as a stupid question. We'd rather you ask than worried about it. We're always there to help and answer any of those queries.
Brilliant.
Yeah, something I really liked was the difference between what you're responsible for as the owner and, what the housing association does. They don't really have anything to do with, the upkeep of the property, really, unless it's one of the new style leases you mentioned, then they can contribute something towards it. So that's really interesting. And also the buying off plan, the kind of pros and cons with doing that, because you might get it slightly cheaper than kind of market value at the point of completion.
The point of completion. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us today, Lisa. It's been a pleasure, and I hope you've enjoyed yourself.
I have. Thank you very much for having me.
We've definitely learned a lot from Lisa today, and stay tuned for more episodes of Shared Ownership Unpacked. Head to wherever you get your podcasts to listen to more.